in reality, should anybody really be playing a sport where you use your brain to hit people with? I mean, I don't know. I know the younger the kids definitely shouldn't be playing. And when I see these little 5-year-olds out there and 6 and 7-year-olds, first of all, why are they out there to begin with? I mean, is it the kids really want to play that bad, or is it the parents? So I have a problem with it because, football was a passion for me. I mean, literally, I dreamed, and I know all kids dream about making the NFL. I mean, I was lifting weights in my bedroom when I was in 7th grade. I was a skinny, scrawny little kid, and I built a bench press out of 2x4s and a picnic bench, and had little scrawny weights, and I was drinking raw eggs at night, trying to put weight on everything I could because I wanted to be the greatest NFL player that ever lived. And but then and I look back on it now. I don't know. I mean, definitely, I don't think the younger kids should be playing. Absolutely, and this holds true for anyone with a brain injury. 4 years ago, I was 52, I think. I was on 4 different dementia medicines at once. I was told to turn them, quote unquote, from my primary care. You have frontal lobe dementia. You need to turn in your driver's license, file for SSI, and get your finances in order. And I looked at them. I said, I have 3 kids. I had a wife at the time. I had a business at the time. What are you telling me? The game's over, and I pack it in. And so I started on hyperbaric oxygen treatments. I just had my 239th treatment this last week. Every 40 treatments, I go back to Dr. Amon's clinic and do a full 8-hour, full-blown neurocog evaluation. My microcognitive memory scores have improved, I believe, 16.3% now. And I'm going on 57 or 58. My memory is improving. I quit all 4 of the dementia medicines I'm on, or I was on. The craniosacral therapy was great. We did a week of just intensive, and that's just hands-on type stuff. By the second night, I had a major headache down there. By the second night, my headache was gone, and I was sleeping better, like I mentioned. I've done near-infrared light therapy, where they just put a little cap on you with but that near-infrared light will do that in the brain. So I've done the next. I'm leaving tonight. I fly out tonight at 10 o'clock for a week in Cleveland. I'm going to get 4 to 5 40-minute Nexlin treatments a day. I was down there a couple of months ago. It's just a magnetic electrode on my forehead, one on each mastoid bone, and it just repolarizes the cells. When you get banged around a lot, things get cattywampus, and so you get everything firing in this correct direction. I've done mega doses of omega-3 fish oils. They're almost, you get real high grade that have a 2-to-1 ratio of DHA to EPA acids. Well, that's basically what your brain and the myelin sheaths on the neurons are made out of, so you can repair that stuff. I do high doses of natural antioxidants, cranberry juices, blueberry juices, the latest and greatest, how do you pronounce the new one? Acai juice. Mm-hmm. Okay, so those are things that I'm doing. I use neuroplasticity. I try to do things out of the ordinary. If you're right-handed, left-handed, causes other areas of your brain to fire up. I'm doing everything in my powers to fight off where a lot of these guys have been going. So we have a whole if you go to our website, we have a whole list of my brain recovery program.
George, what's the website?
Well, the website is www.thevisgergroup.org, and it's a brain injury recovery clearinghouse. We have on our advisory panel, I have Dr. Rich Ellenbogen, I have Dr. Bennett O'Malley, I have some of the top folks in a number of fields, and we just set it up so people can come and get information, and if I don't have it, I can direct you to somebody else. So.
You, Chris. You've been all over media because of what you did, and you're 24 years old?
Yeah.
George is at the other end of that spectrum. We got people older than George passing away, and you're fairly fresh out of college. how do you want to go forward? What do you want your legacy to be? Obviously, you leaving the NFL and leaving behind, I'm presuming, millions of dollars to have a life for yourself. That made a statement in and of itself. Even if you never do anything further in this arena, it made a strong statement, one that Junior Seau made by taking his life, and that Dave Duerson made by taking his life, and that George made, Kim's making every day. So where do you go from here? What's in this for you now? Are you staying in the game? What are you doing?
I think in some capacity I'll be connected to this for the rest of my life. That's just the nature of, I didn't anticipate that it'd be this, it would garner this much attention, but
Right.
it has. And through this experience, I've met people like Rebecca Carpenter and Todd and George and Kim, and it just continues to compound. And there's so many compelling stories and so much important information that I'd like to be a part of it in some capacity. And that's kind of against my nature. I'm more of an introverted guy. I didn't really like doing the interviews. I never liked being the fame that accompanied playing football.
Right.
But I can deal with that. And if I'm the light by which some people come to this information, I'm more than happy to play that role for the sake of knowledge and for the sake of health and our youth and our future.
You realize as young as you are, everybody thinks you're crazy, and the football fanatics don't get it.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting. The money is on everyone's mind.
That's all they understand.
That's all, they see the figures and they say, well, how could you do this? And then, we just witnessed the film and that's how, and
So
to me it's clear.
You gotta be crazy to play the game anyway. So
take us forward. One last question. Take me forward 10 or 15 years. What's your dream? What do you want to be doing? Or are you too young to know?
I'm in the process of figuring that out.
Fair enough.
I'm currently unemployed, so if anybody needs their grass mowed or a babysitter.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to jump in on that. That was one of the things people said about my son. Well, he didn't start, and he played at a big Catholic high school where they recruited kids all over Reno. And I said, well, don't you realize those are the kids that are the crash dummies for the first string? So this is something that is coming to light a little bit more. And definitely people really didn't think about the kids who are riding the bench and being the ones who actually practice with the state championship team. You think think my son didn't take any hits being the crash dummy for a state championship team just because he didn't play in the game? So it's very important to know. And yeah, coaches have a tough time with this. And what we tell them is when you know better, you do better. When people tell me, well, Bear Bryant this and Vince Lombardi that, I said, well, that was 19, whatever. They're smart men. If they lived in 2015 with all the technology we have, they would start to understand human performance. I tell coaches, human performance peaks under praise, not pressure. You want to win? Get smart. Injured players don't keep playing. If I owned a football team, I told Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders, this at Super Bowl in New York. Listen to me. You're supposed to protect your players because you're protecting your own asset. You're not getting this. For family members, the biggest thing is realizing it's an invisible injury and that most people, especially football players, and I kind of fit in with them on this, we don't want to complain and we don't advertise what's going on. So as family members, you have to kind of read people and read between the lines. Also, educate yourself. I was sharing with George earlier in my office, I have a red, yellow, and green light, and that's for my kids because I used to scream at them when they would interrupt. So now when they come in my office, if there's a red light, they turn around and go out. So you have to start learning like some tools as a brain injury survivor of how you can help your family help you. So as a caregiver, learn everything you can. Get on websites like George, look at Amen clinics, and also make sure you care for yourself. As a caregiver, most people forget to take care of themselves, and you can't be a good caregiver if you're not taking care of you. So I'm gonna let George follow.
Good answer.
And I've always said that the families take a worse beating than we do. And in fact, my first slide on my PowerPoint I give, there's a quote from me during my work comp trial. I did sue the 49ers for workers' comp to get my second, third brain surgeries paid for back in the early 80s. But there's a quote from me that I stated a traumatic brain injury is like throwing a rock in a pond. The number of people impacted is huge. I mean, it impacts. I come home, with the anger things going on, and my wife is upset, and she goes to school teaching the next day, and she's talking to her teacher friend about what's going on with me, and her teacher friend goes home and tells her husband, Michael's not playing football. Michael's upset, and I don't know how far out this goes. So the families take a beating. The families need as much help as we do. You need to look into, there's a number of different groups and survivor groups and things like this. We need to talk to the mothers. You can go, my executive director for the Visger group started Mothers Against Concussions. You can go to Renee's website, which is affiliated with ours. The mothers and the families, like I said, need as much or more help as we do. So know you're not alone. There are people out there that can understand what you're going through, and there's a lot of information that can help you. So, reach out to other
The question, there was a moment in camp when I fit a lead play. A lead play is where a fullback and a linebacker have a one-on-one collision in a hole. And it's a short yardage play and a violent play. And yeah, I sustained probably a mild concussion on that lead play. Our fullback for the Niners is 290 plus pounds. But I played through it. I hadn't yet made the team. There was a chance I could still be our starting linebacker with Navarro Bowman out, so I played through it. But at that moment, I changed my thinking, and I started to read into it more and look it up online and find out what I could. So that I'd point to that moment as a pivotal time in my change of thinking. I've thought about that every day for almost a year now, and can't really come to a conclusion. I'm conflicted. It's such a part of our culture. It was such a part of my experience growing up, becoming the person I am today. My best friends are all in football. Every contact I've made in my adult life from 18 to 24 is through football. I don't know. I'm conflicted. It'll continue to be played. That's for sure. I don't know for how long and in what capacity. It's a catch-22. It's so violent that improvements need to be made, but improving it then creates something other than we know as football. So I can't tell you, and I wish I could. I do think we need to take strides to better it for people that are going to partake, and I do think that knowledge is huge. The number one critique I would get about my decision to walk away was, hey, you knew what you were getting into, and you chose to do it. I kind of push back on that. I don't think either are really true. I didn't know. I knew the acronym CT. I didn't know it stood for chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I didn't know the number of cases that had been studied. I didn't know that there were kids who'd never been diagnosed with a concussion who had this disease. I had no idea. So did I really know what I was getting into? Obviously, I knew football was bad for me. You have shoulder surgeries, have a finger that goes the wrong way, things like that. But I didn't know could have a brain disease if I played for a long time. And even the idea of choice. I choose to do it, obviously, and I chose to walk away. I was born in a family.
About a year ago, and Alex Mack, I have a knack for sitting next to NFL players on planes. And so I'm like, oh, wow. And he starts asking me things like, what's your favorite book? And I'm like, wow, this guy's really smart. He went to Berkeley. So I start unleashing on the guy. And he's like, I'll call you when I'm done playing. Don't say anything else. It's tough to hear these things when you're actively playing and you love it. As far as watching it, I used to go to the Super Bowls. My business partner's an NFL Hall of Famer. I love football too. My son loved football with all his heart. I didn't watch Super Bowl this year. It's hard for me to see the plastic helmets because I've done so much research. I actually know what plastic does. So it's difficult to watch. If some of those things changed, perhaps I wouldn't feel as uncomfortable.
When I got out of the game, which of course wasn't, the way I planned on leaving, I was 23 years old. I just had my third brain surgery in 9 months, and I was done. There was no, by George, and that's what people don't realize, that when you're done, it's not like, okay, hey, great job, thanks for being here. You're just gone. Your name's taken off the roster, and it's like you don't exist there anymore. But unfortunately, I was thrown to the wolves and fought, the lawsuit, the creditors for years trying to get my brain surgeries paid for. So I literally did not watch a football game for probably 6 or 7 years. I was so freaking disgusted by it all. And you have to understand that to even play the game, you can play basketball and kind of like it, and play baseball, and kind of like it. Football is a game you have to love to play it, because it is so physically demanding that it's not fun unless you love it. So that was a very tough thing for me. Over the years, I kind of mellowed out and I started watching games. Even to this day, if I watch part of a game, someone can walk in and ask me what the score is, and I don't know. I'll be watching the game like I watched a film. I can tell you, the defensive tackle had a hell of a arm over move or whatever. But a few years ago, it was crazy. I was watching a game, not even really paying attention. My wife walked in the room, and she said, "How can you watch that when you know what they're doing to those young guys?" And I tell you what, from that day on, I stepped back. I thought, you know what? I know what's happened to these guys, and again, I'm not anti-football, but I can't watch it. I see a big hit, which in the old days, Chris and I understand, that used to get your blood pumping. I played a total of 12 or 13 years, and I carried the ball twice. My whole game was knuckles in the dirt hitting people, so it was all about the violence of the game for me. And I can't even watch anymore.
If I might just give an interesting context. After Junior Seau took his life, that was a major turning point. Everybody loved that guy. He shot himself, and he looked so healthy and happy. Immediately, the NFL started to promote Sam Gordon, this 9-year-old girl sensation. YouTube. She was a good football player. She was scoring touchdowns and playing with boys. The media put her right next to Roger Goodell in the press box. She was on the front cover of Wheaties.
Yeah.
That was an amazing marketing ploy. So, in my impression, it's the best. My take is that we educate parents and give them the educational knowledge so they can make a determination whether or not they want to start their kids on that track. That's, I feel like, the greatest responsibility I have as somebody who's aware of these things, somebody who's got some brain, marbles moving around, and so the young kids, starting now and informing them and creating educational tools so they understand the risk better and how the brain functions. And we should be celebrating. Yeah. So that's.
I don't think a paradigm shift is going to come from a hierarchy. I don't think it's going to be top down. It has to be grassroots.
Unless there's more guys like you who are just saying,
Every one of us came from the bottom. Every change in cultures came from grassroots, from the bottom up.
Exactly. So I don't know how yet, but it has to be the community of players. And
does somebody have to die on the field on Sunday on live TV?
That's not going to matter.
That won't matter, will it? You don't believe it wouldn't make a difference?
Well, Von Gammon, the Georgia player, and the guy at Army,
and those are typically broken necks or other issues, right?
Should I go on? Americans are ran by insurance and litigation. We might not like litigation. It has a bad taste in most people's mouth. But what's going to change sports for youth sports is litigation. Bottom line. More lawsuits that require changes. There's moms like myself who are losing our sons at early ages to reckless driving, suicide, and drug overdoses that have CTE. Those moms are banding together. I'm here to tell you, if it's my last breath, there won't be any plastic helmets. There's going to be athletic trainers. Little kids aren't going to be playing. And you're not going to be able to buy insurance for a 12-year-old to play when I'm done.
George, you want to comment about insurance, Wells Fargo's program?
Yeah, I can talk the insurance issue. Like I said, I was forced to sue for work comp to get my second, third brain surgeries paid for. In 2012, the 49ers work comp carrier, the Travelers, sat down with me, wanted me to settle. They offered me $73,000 to close out my knee case, and I'm scheduled for a total reconstruction or a total replacement on my left knee. I've had 3 surgeries, 2 since I've retired. And so $73,000, and I'll be responsible for all my brain surgeries, all my knee surgeries, my grand mal seizures, everything. We said, I can't afford to do that. That was February 2012. They have paid 0 bills since then. They owe one of my medical providers $34,000, another one $9,800. They owe me over $3,000 out of pocket, and we're back into another big lawsuit against them just to get my earned benefits. So that's one aspect of the insurance. The second, as I mentioned earlier, who's going to write a plan for the young kids to play when all this plays out, when it's proven that it's causing brain damage. And then the third would be there are some programs right now, Wells Fargo, their Play It Safe concussion care program, which offers for a minuscule cost. I believe it's like about $4.50 a player for high school teams particularly, that if a kid suffers a head injury, a brain injury, that will cover them all through whatever treatment they need. So that's a step in the right direction. There's a lot of little short, choppy steps that people are doing. And again, I don't think there's any silver bullet that's going to... We need a whole bunch of these little changes and things and people to step forward if we really want to save the game.
I just want you to access Michael Oriard, historian about... he's written... Are you in your 6th or 7th book? Whatever. But Michael's got more information about the history and evolution of the game itself, how those rules change the dynamic to make the game even more dangerous, how the media portrayed the game, selling paper. I mean, that's just, he's any questions for Michael Oriard?
Well, I get really defensive actually when I encounter the idea that football is not only brutal but brutalizing, and I don't just think personally about this. I think about my teammates who are, for the most part, impressive men that maybe I didn't have a whole lot in common with beyond the football field, but they were really impressive men. And so, every now and then we have one of these incidents, of course, where they did that horrible thing because they play football. No, that's not the case. My sense of of football is that it's compensatory. It embodies a kind of archaic form of masculinity that has no function whatsoever in our society anymore. But either for cultural reasons or for biological reasons, it's still really appealing. We desire or need it in some form or other. So I do wonder what happens if we do away with football. And, is the damage it's doing so great that we just have to find an alternative to it? Back to the previous question, too, about the NFL, and nothing's going to happen from the top down. The one thing that we have going for us to pressure the NFL to do something is that they are immensely concerned about what they call their brand, their image, their audience, and they have this, somehow 40, 50 million of really diehard fans, but then they have the 40 or 50 million of casual fans, including a lot of women. And if they don't seem to care about the well-being of their players, they're going to lose a lot of that audience. So whether caring is the same as seeming to care, they're going to have to act as if they do care. Their worst nightmare is that the medical evidence become definitive that a very large percentage of players are going to be long-term damaged by this. On the other hand, they can't afford not to try to support the research and so on because they don't want to look indifferent. And so things are going to play out messily even in relation to the NFL. One of the nightmare scenarios is that where it's really happening is where parents are not letting their kids play football. Well, which parents are not letting their kids play football? It's parents whose kids have alternative ways of expressing themselves and succeeding and all that sort of thing. So the nightmare scenario is that the NFL is played only by, lower class, primarily minority young men, for the entertainment of the privileged, and predominantly white majority. And the NFL doesn't want to see that happen. They're the closest thing we have to a mass culture today, and they would just become another niche sport like ultimate fighting or whatever. So the NFL can't afford indifference, or at least the appearance of indifference. And so the possibility of the game becoming safer, George was talking about in the 60s, I learned to block and tackle with my shoulder. I graduated from high school in 66 and college from 1970. Through high school, I blocked and tackled with my shoulder. In college, I learned to stick my head in the numbers. Guys we interviewed, some learned it sooner than I did. So I've wondered, can we go back? Can we take the head out of football? We can't take the helmets off without it looking like rugby. But can we take the head out of football in some other ways and block and tackle with our shoulders more and still get the charge from it? And I don't know the answer. When I think about Chris, I was an offensive lineman, and I could steer my head. When Chris is filling the hole, with that 290-pound fullback coming at him, he can't hit him a glancing blow. So is it even possible to take the head out of football enough to make it safer? The older I get smarter, but what happens is I know the questions better than the answers. But I do know that the answers are complicated and messy. I don't know if that helps at all.
Out of respect to our time, we're about 8 minutes over. So I want to thank you for attending, and it's just an honor to have worked with these guys and be on this journey. And it's going to continue as Our Brain Matters cross-country tour. So, thank you. What we're going to be doing is George and I are partnering, going across the country with Our Brain Matters show. It's a multimedia show that first of all gives a social historical context to the value of the game. And then of course we talk about the brain injuries, and we actually get into the autopsy a little bit in much more detail, but show what parts of the brains have, so you can see the tissue damage, and then we correlate that to, of course, the behavior that part of the brain manages. George gets an opportunity to talk about his brain and the behavior shifts, and you'll be able to see his pictures and the scans of his brain. So it's a really educational opportunity. But beyond that is, all right, now what can we do? George is a guinea pig. He gets paid to go to these treatment facilities all over the country. And so part of my work will be showing up with George, filming some of those treatment technologies that are working for him that may help other people. He's not telling you that this works for you. He's telling you that these things are available so we can get more TBI treatment information, whether it's a supplement or technology or whatever it might be. So I'm just proud to be associated with George and his group. And
Todd, where's your website for the follow-up? What happens now beyond the movie? It was an amazing movie. Thank you for your years you put in. I know how hard it was.
Yeah, I saw you around.
Yeah, we started out, you watching high school football, not
That's
sure
right, yeah.
where this story was going,
Right.
and I think you found out pretty quick.
Yeah.
So where do people go to find out more information about how they can get involved in about the movie and maybe about this stuff you just talked about with George?
This event happened pretty quickly.
Right.
I heard that Chris was going to be coming through town, and we made a premiere with his presence. So at this point, I have the main website is Gridiron Gladiators movie.com.
Okay.
That defaults you to savingfootball.com if you're on mobile device.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do all of the web stuff as well, so I get a little behind. So at this point, we have brainmatters.jimdo.com, JIMDO. It's a free site, allows you to build it.
Okay.
So
Good.
brainmatters.jimdo.com, you'll be able to understand what's happening for the national tour. So to answer your question, there's not a specific...
That's a good place to start.
Yeah, those three.
Can we ask Chris a question?